Good evening, Council. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Is there any conflict of interest amongst council members here tonight? Seeing none, I need the adoption of the published agenda tonight. I need a mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? It's carried. Can everybody hear me clearly now? We had a problem at the first meeting. Okay, good. Okay, thank you. And we'll go right to reports from administration, and we'll go right to Chris. Chris?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. So what I've got in front of you is an expression of interest for myself to apply to be on the board for AMO, for the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and then as a result would be on the board of ROMA, the Rural Ontario as a Municipality. So I think, I mean, everybody's familiar with AMO and ROMA, what they do, and how involved they are with what happens in our municipalities and guidelines and rules and pressures and whatnot. So I think it's something. I've been with the town for a number of years now. I think it would be beneficial to the town for me to be able to be part of this board. I think in terms of the direct and indirect relationships that come as a result of serving on a board like this, also the inherent knowledge and that direct relationship with AMO and being able to represent Essex and the role that we have in that rural caucus, but also with urban centers as well. So as far as time commitment goes, they generally meet 6 times a year. The last Friday of the month, preceded by Thursday committee meeting of the whole. So the meeting schedule is outlined in the report. I don't think I need to go through that, as well as the AMO conference. I anticipate a lot of it is still going to be virtual moving into the next year. I guess I'll leave it at that. It's pretty self-explanatory. I think it'd be good for me. I think it'd be good for the town. And I need council's, I guess, a resolution from council for me to at least apply, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Thank you, Chris. No, I agree with what you're saying. It'd be great if you were on the board. I'm going to open it up to council. Any discussion on it? Councillor Bowman, go ahead.
I think this is a great opportunity, not only for the town, but for Chris himself. To my knowledge, we've never had anybody on those boards over the years, and it sort of gives them an inside view into what's going on, especially from the government standpoint. I think a great opportunity, and when the time's up, I would certainly be willing to move that his name be put forward. So I'll wait till everybody else speaks first.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll have you as a mover, but we'll have other discussion. Councillor Bondi, you had something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good move too, and I believe it will bring continuity to AMO from the town of Essex and from our region. I still do have a little bit of reservation. I know that it could be a sole reservation, but I would not be myself if I didn't say it. So in terms of, like, are we adding more workload to, a fairly new CAO? We've heard through the shared services report that, there was a need for a personal assistant. I know it's only 6 meetings a year, but that's quite a bit. That is quite a bit. Meetings on the Friday and the Thursday. So I support it. I just want to make sure that we understand the pressures that we're already experiencing, and if we can handle the added workload onto our CAO.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can just, thank you. If I can just add, pardon me? If I can just add to that,
yep.
We know that Chris has taken on 2 roles for almost a year. So for 6 meetings a year, I don't see where that would affect his performance. And another thing, Council, it shows that he's showing long-term commitment to our municipality, which is great. So anyways, who was next? Deputy Mayor Meloche, go ahead.
Thank you through your worship. Yes, I think this is a great opportunity to have our CAO in this position, and I'm glad to see I'm just glad to see him want this position and show the enthusiasm to expand horizons. And I think as far as the town goes, to have somebody from the town of Essex sitting on that board with the rural caucus like that is going to add some benefit to our ability to have insight as to perhaps grants that are coming out, and how we need to organize ourselves in order to make ourselves better and in the eyes of the province, so that we're first desire of the province to give some money to. But I think that this is a great opportunity, and not even just for Chris, but for Mr. Sweet to be, have some practice as CAO in those days where he's gone. And then Doug's department as well to, like Doug's going to be busy with perhaps some of the CAO business. That's an opportunity learning experience for Doug's department and so on. So all around, I think this is going to be a good experience. And, I thought too about the same thing that Councillor Bondi was talking about, but regardless of, where we're at with the workload, we'll just have to live with whatever's there, because I think this is an opportunity that surpasses any other reasons why we wouldn't want him to do this. So I'm all in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Anybody else? Councillor Van Andel, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, I don't see any downside to this at all. In fact, I think we're going to get way more out of it than any of the time that it costs us. Anyone who's been involved in a professional workplace knows that this kind of training and interaction at a provincial level leads to all kinds of unimagined benefits and connections and knowledge and additional profile. I'm very happy that Mr. Nepsey and us have been asked to do this, and we'll reap all kinds of benefits from this. The networking will help him. It will help the town. It'll help the rest of our administration. It will improve the profile of our town. I mean, there are still 400 different municipalities in this province, and a lot of them get lost. And this will help raise our profile a bit. And I just want to point out, this isn't actually the only one of these that's come to our area recently. We just learned last week that Rodney Bouchard, the head of Union Water, has been named the Canadian chairman of the entire Water and Wastewater Association of Canada. Now, we only own a little piece of Union Water, but it still brings attention. It's almost as though they've discovered, hey, there's good people down there in Essex County. So I think this is terrific. Whatever time it is, it would be like 10, 12 days a year. That would be like adding one important housing project to Mr. Nepsey's workload. And as a guy who wears an iron ring, he knows how to juggle a lot of balls. So keep them in the air. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? So first of all, Chris, I want to thank you for putting your name forward. That's great news. So we had a mover. We had Councillor Bowman move the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Van Andel. All in favor? All in favor? Carried. Thank you a lot, Chris.
Wish me luck.
Yep. And we'll move right on to presentations now. The proposed plan of subdivision for Parkland Estates, and we'll go right to Lori, and then we'll go to Rita. Okay, Lori, if you're ready, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council and everyone that's here joining us. I wanted to take a moment to highlight one of our municipalities for urban centers, that being Harrow. Before Rita proceeds, I wanted just to share a couple of things. Most of us are counting down the days to see that first shovel in the ground for the Harrow streetscaping project, which will not only revitalize the downtown core, but will also no doubt spotlight Harrow as a place to visit, do business, and live. Tonight's meeting will provide us with an inside look at one of our future residential subdivisions in Harrow, and As we all know, a residential subdivision that's very close to the beautiful amenities that this urban center has to offer. So walking, biking, strolling to the nearby parks and restaurants, retail establishments, community facilities, places of worship, and more. I'm very excited to see this application be presented tonight. Rita Jabbour, our manager of planning services, has been working very closely with the county planner, who is our approval authority on plans of subdivision, as well as the developer. I do want to remind council, friendly reminder, that the purpose of tonight's meeting is to satisfy the public meeting requirement for a Planning Act application. So what that means is a decision should not be made tonight. We're here to hear from the public and you as a council representing your residents. So without further ado, take it over Rita.
Thank you, Lori. Rita, go ahead when you're ready.
Through the chair, good evening, members of council and members of the public who might be joining us tonight via YouTube. I'm going to give the clerk's division a moment to start the presentation. But as Lori noted, we're here tonight to consider a proposed draft plan of subdivision for the vacant lands located on the east side of County Road 13. And the subdivision is going to be known as Parkland Estates. Next slide, please. So as Lori noted, the purpose of this meeting is to gather input from the public and from council on an application for a draft plan of subdivision. The property itself is located in the Harrow primary settlement area. No decision will be made tonight. For those of you who are new to the subdivision process, the decision maker on a plan of subdivision is the manager of planning services for the County of Essex. The Town of Essex has been requested to host this meeting on behalf of the county. Administration will be forwarding the results of the public meeting to the county in the days to follow. I will explain a bit more about the process for approval later on in the presentation, but for now, we're going to delve into the proposal. Next slide, please. So the lands that are subject to subdivision approval are a 5.65 hectare parcel, that's approximately 14 acres, of vacant land, which are located just south of Harrowwood and just west of the town-owned recreational lands identified as the Pollard Park and the Kingsman Participark Trail. The location of the subject lands are identified with a star on the displayed ward map. Next slide, please. In this slide, the subject lands are delineated in blue. The sole access to the site is off of County Road 13, more colloquially known as Erie Road. The lands are designated for residential development in the Town of Essex official plan. And most recently, in 2019, the lands were granted a zoning bylaw amendment, which effectively changed the zoning of the lands from agricultural to residential district 2.2, which permits a variety of medium density housing, namely your single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, and townhomes. A public meeting was held as part of the rezoning process as well. The holding symbol that you see in front of the R2.2 zoning designation simply denotes that development of the lands is being held until certain fulfillment of conditions are met. So in this case, the holding symbol will be removed when the property is on a registered plan of subdivision and full municipal services are available. Next slide, please. This is the proposed layout for the subdivision, which will be referred to as Parkland Estates. As you can see, access to the subdivision will continue to be by way of the sole access at County Road 13 or Erie Road. Internally, the subdivision will consist of 4 local roads identified as streets A, B, C, and D on your screen. The subdivision will consist of 49 residential lots in total. Administration will be requesting the installation of a multi-use trail along the north side of Street A in lieu of sidewalks. The trail has been proposed along the north side to remove any conflicts with driveways. The trail would fit more appropriately than sidewalks because it will match the trail on County Road 13 and the trail system in the Participark. Although the composition of dwellings within the subdivision is subject to change, the subdivision is proposed to be comprised of 26 lots for single detached dwellings, which will be located primarily along Street D, parts of Street A, and at the top portion of each cul-de-sac. 23 of the proposed lots will be dedicated for semi-detached dwellings. In total, approval of this subdivision will result in the creation of 72 residential dwelling units. The unit sizes will range between 1,200 to 1,400 square feet for the semis, with a price range between $375,000 to $475,000, and 1,300 to 2,200 square feet for the singles, with a price range of $450,000 to $800,000. Next slide, please. At this time, the proponent is proposing to develop the subdivision in phases, with the first phase comprising the area highlighted in yellow. Subdivision approval would be granted for the entire plan, however, and services will be constructed to accommodate all phases. Next slide, please. So under normal circumstances, the town would require a 5% parkland dedication as a condition of approval, or payment in cash in lieu of parkland where lands are not required for parks purposes. Due to the proximity of Pollard Park and the Partissa Park lands to the subdivision, cash in lieu of parkland will be directed towards the construction of a gravel public parking area on the recreation lands to accommodate a total of 60 vehicles. The cost and the construction of this parking area will be the sole responsibility of the developer. Additionally, the stormwater management system, which will be composed of a dry detention pond, will also be located on the abutting recreational lands. This proposition has benefits to both the town and the developer. Namely, it helps cover the cost of the parking area for the municipality because it is the responsibility of the developer. And it saves costs for the developer because there will be no need to build a turning circle at the end of Street A and no need to dedicate lots within the subdivision for a stormwater management system. Next slide, please. This graphic outlines the location of the stormwater management pond and the gravel parking lot. The pond to the north of the gravel parking area. Next slide, please. As part of the complete application submission, the applicant was required to submit a stormwater management plan and a servicing study to the County of Essex. That report and that site and the servicing plans were prepared and submitted by Rude Engineering Incorporated. The lands for the proposed parking area were also used in determining the release rates for the stormwater management pond. The plans have been reviewed by Infrastructure Services and they are still in development. It has also been reviewed by our peer reviewer, Stantec Consulting Limited. Next slide, please. The applicant was also requested to submit a traffic impact study by the County of Essex Roads Department. The report reviewed the impact of the development at the intersection of Pollard Drive in County Road 13 and Dunn Road in County Road 13. Nominal impact was observed at these intersections. The study noted that the sole access at County Road 13 and the site will be controlled by a stop sign. Traffic lights were not warranted at any intersection studied. No obstructions were observed at the site access. The report also studied the impact of the proposed parking lot, which was found to be negligible even in the worst case scenario. A photometric analysis was also completed for the subdivision that ensures that light pollution from street lights will be controlled and the fixtures will be dark sky compliant. The report was reviewed by the County of Essex Infrastructure Department, and they agree with the conclusions of the report. It's important to note that the final design of the road has not yet been submitted. Next slide, please. So the county has heard back from some agencies that were circulated, specifically the Director of Education from the Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board. They recommended sidewalks or recreation pathways for student safety and bus stops. And again, we are proposing a multi-use trail. We have also heard from the watershed planner for the Essex Region Conservation Authority, who recommends stormwater be addressed in accordance with Regional Swim Standards Manual. And this is the manual that we, as the town of Essex and our peer reviewer, use to review the stormwater management plan. And finally, we have heard from Hydro One, who has no comments and concerns. Next slide, please. In accordance with regulation, we did give notice to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject site. All those property owners that were directly notified by a mailed letter are indicated in blue. Notice was also published in the Harrow News and were posted on our website. We didn't receive any written comments as of November 18th, 2020. However, I have been in correspondence with one of the circulated residents who has registered as a delegate tonight. Next slide, please. So when the County of Essex approves a plan of subdivision in draft, it means it was approved with conditions. Final approval of the subdivision does not take place until all the conditions have been satisfied. The county works with the local municipality on establishing those conditions. Administration will be preparing a report to council with the recommended conditions for approval for council's consideration before they are forwarded to the county for decision. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps, administration will forward the results of this public meeting to the manager of planning services for the County of Essex. We have 15 days. Secondly, we'll prepare a report to Town of Essex Council outlining the recommended development servicing conditions. And these are expected to be prepared for council for the December 7th Town of Essex regular meeting. And at that meeting, council may set out by resolution the request that the manager of planning services for the County of Essex approve draft plan of subdivision subject to compliance with the recommended development servicing conditions. And finally, we're going to forward council's resolution to the County of Essex for draft plan approval of subdivision. The proponent will have 3 years to satisfy those conditions. Final approval of the subdivision, again, is only granted when all those conditions are fulfilled. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Rita. Is there any questions to Rita on the presentation tonight? Deputy Mayor Malash is first. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through your worship, I'm going to direct this question to Mr. Jabor. And what I'm more wondering about is rear yard drainage on the existing properties that back into the new subdivision. There's 6 of them, I believe, on County Road 13. And then we have obviously the 2 properties that are to the north of the new subdivision. So I know that in some of the instances that we've had in the in Ward 1, particularly close to Hanlon, we've had some issues with properties that did not have rear yard drainage. And I'm guessing that there's a chance that these properties are in the same position on County Road 13. Some of them might have been there longer than a time frame when that was required as part of the building code. So can you perhaps just touch on that for me for a minute, just to tell me what perhaps we're going to do to make sure that that's not going to be an issue?
So through the chair, if I may, I think that's a more appropriate question for our Director of Infrastructure Services, who has been reviewing the servicing plans for the subdivision as well as the stormwater management plans.
Thank you.
I guess go right to Kevin. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, as Rita mentioned, there is a stormwater management plan that is being proposed as part of this subdivision. Rear yard catch basins are included as part of the development itself. As far as the rear yard drainage within adjacent properties, I think the best strategy from here would be, as we discussed previously, is to notify those adjacent property owners of the development, which partially has been completed, and their responsibility for drainage on their own properties and the potential impacts of that. So I will meet with Lori and we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that and how we're going to word that letter, as this will be the first one following that previous discussion with the last development.
Thanks, Mr. Gerard, Director Gerard. That'd be great. It's just that we have run into some issues here in Ward 1, and I know that we're better off to give these residents advance warning that there's potential for the need for them to install rear yard drainage on their properties. And if they want some help in understanding it, I know that our drainage, not our drainage supervisor, but our building inspector, Kevin Carter, is very familiar with how to explain it. He's done a great job explaining it to the residents in Ward 1. I've been with him on several occasions, as Councillor Guerin has been as well, and Councillor Bowman, trying to explain to residents. And I think most of them would not have been as upset as they had been if they had been given advance notice. And I just think it's fair of us to make sure that these residents are well aware, so that they don't see this happening to them after everything's been developed and perhaps a fence been put in place and it's difficult to get to the backs of their yards. So that'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I'm very pleased with the subdivision. I'm also pleased with the way that it's also going to be developed at the back end, working towards the front. I know a lot of subdivisions, they start at the front and work towards the back, and then you've got all these trucks driving by houses that have already been built. It's a smart move to start at the back and move to the front, I believe. So a beautiful layout. Looking forward to having that happen as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Guerin, you're next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, through you. Yeah, I'm also glad to see this development coming to fruition. A couple of things I need to get some clarification on. First question, with respect to the location of the pond and the parking lot. Has baseball people, you like to park closer to the field, but is the reason the pond is not flipped with the parking lot because of foul balls? Is that what we're taking into consideration? Damage to cars? Or can those be flipped? That's question number one. I have a follow-up.
Who can answer that? Rita, can you answer that? Or maybe Kevin? Kevin, can you answer that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. There isn't really an opportunity to flip the parking lot and the pond. The rationale behind that is because access to the parking lot from the end of Street A is required. We did a lot of analysis with the developer's engineer and the volume calculations and elevations within the park. The feasibility of the location of the actual pond is the preferred location.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Guerin.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, follow up to that. Yeah, I wasn't too sure if it was because of that or not. The other concern, I guess, not so much for myself, but maybe for the people who are going to be purchasing lot 16 and part of lot 15, without a turnaround circle at all, people are going to be using those driveways as turnarounds. Is there any way of incorporating a turnaround beyond the development at all? And if it's, I guess if that pond has to be there, the answer is probably going to be no to that. So I just have some concerns about the turnaround process for cars coming in. Yes, they can go inside the parking lot and turn around, but I think most of them are probably going to use the driveways of lot 16 and 15 to do that. So just a comment. I see the concerns with putting one there, though.
Go ahead, Kevin, if you want to speak on that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. That was the intention also of putting the parking lot at the end. The parking lot is fairly sizable. It will act as a turnaround for traffic as well. So that was considered by infrastructure services as well, that there is enough space within the parking lot to turn around any emergency vehicle, bus, or any vehicular traffic.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Bowman, go ahead.
Just one question. Is the hydro being supplied for that area by Hydro One or Elk Energy?
Who can answer that one? I guess, Kevin, go ahead. You can answer that one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Hydro 1.
Hi, Dylan. Okay, thank you. Anybody else from council? Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Bowman, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Kevin on that, and I appreciate his bow tie. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to our administrative staff. So there is going to be a trail on the main road going in, but there's going to be no sidewalks on any of the crescents. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Rita.
For you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. A multi-use trail will be provided along the north side of Street A only.
Okay, thank you. And the retention pond, that is on the developer's property. That's not on our parkland property.
Rita, go ahead.
Through the chair, that will be located on our property, on the Parkland property.
Okay, so it'll be located on the end of like the south end of Pollard Park then.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, I'm not sure if Mr. Sweet is here because we've talked before about potentially adding another ball diamond and stuff. And, you know, will that impact that if we decide to do that down the line?
Go ahead,
Mr.
Doug.
Chair. Yeah, it wasn't adding a diamond. It was enhancing the back diamond there in Pollard Park. And this development would not hinder that. Actually, would help it with the parking lot being right there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I do have a few more questions. I believe we're asking for trees at the junior school development. Are we asking for each property to have a tree in this development? Is that part of our development standards?
Go ahead, Rita.
For you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Part of our development standard stipulates that the developer is responsible for installing 1 tree per lot.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And how much cash in lieu is the town getting for that parkland? Is there a number figure already? I got questions from constituents, so that's one of them.
I don't think there'd be a number there yet, would there? Rita, would there be a number there yet?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have a dollar figure. As noted in my presentation, the developer is responsible for the construction of that parking area, and that'll be equivalent of the cash in lieu.
Okay, thank you. And the parking lot, is it remaining gravel for drainage issues and or just cost issues? And is there going to be a buffer between the gravel parking lot and the houses? Because they're going to, or is that up to the individual residents to put a buffer of trees there?
Go ahead, Rita.
For you, Mr. Chair, regarding whether the parking lot is going to be gravel for stormwater issues, I think that's a better question for Kevin Gerard. I know with respects to the stormwater management plan, they designed it as an asphalt parking lot, but I'm not entirely sure why it was decided to be gravel. So maybe Kevin or Doug can explain a little bit more about that.
Kevin, can you explain it? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll speak first a little bit to the buffer area, and then I'll pass it over to Doug about having the parking lot as gravel. Currently in the park, there are existing trees. The trees are going to be staying within the park, which will provide the buffer between the gravel parking lot and the housing. So there shouldn't be a need for any vegetation or anything like that, to set any additional vegetation to separate the visibility from the park into those homes. As far as the parking lot goes, with it being gravel, I'll pass that over to Doug.
Thank you, Kevin. Go ahead, Doug.
Mr. Mayor, yeah. To Councillor Bonnie's question, we're looking at keeping the lot as gravel at this point, just because of the usage we're looking at. Could be paved in the future, but I think throughout the town, we'd have other lots we'd like to pave first prior to that one. So it is a cost thing at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do know that there are many people in our community that are looking for housing. So this is much appreciated. You know, I know people are messaging me all the time. They want to buy lots or they have bought lots. Do we have a start date on this if we give approval at the December 6th meeting?
I thought it was late spring, wasn't it, Rita? Late spring, early summer? Rita?
For you, Mr. Chair, the proponent has actually registered as a delegate for tonight's meeting, so he might be able to answer that question with an approximate date.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Anybody else from council? I think Councillor Van and Dolan, I think you were next. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I wrote this down here about half an hour ago that I wanted to single out administration for thanks for coming up with the unique solutions to the stormwater pond and the parking and the trail, because you know, it often irritates me when I look at a development and I see this big, mostly useless stormwater pond, which is taking the place of what should be housing, which should be lots, or say in the case of Highway 3 and County Road 8, where there's a huge pond, like right on the highest visibility, most valuable piece of land, you've got a stormwater pond. It should be somewhere else. So I think it's great that they've tucked this over in the back and that they didn't cost this developer lots, because although, you know, municipalities all over Ontario and probably all over the world think it's normal to shake down developers and extort them for parkland and parking and all this stuff. All it does is drive up the cost of parking, the cost of housing, and push the cost of housing further out of reach of the people that we just heard from the last councillor say are so desperate for more housing. So I think it's great that that we found those two solutions and that there's at least one sidewalk. I just think it's terrible when I drive around some of our newer subdivisions and there isn't a single sidewalk on any street. I just can't imagine living in such a place. So I'm glad there's one trail here too. So to me, that's three great solutions from administration. One question: are the number of semi lots and single lots carved in stone, or can the developer adjust that depending on market reaction, market demand? Thank you.
Go ahead, Rita. Go ahead.
For you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Vanderdolen, that can be adjusted. So it's not set in stone, the number of dwelling units and the type of dwelling units.
Good. Thank you. I think Deputy Mayor Malash, you were next.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, back to Ms. Jabor. So I caught on to the fact that it sounds like we're not going to have sidewalks down the side streets, streets B, C, and D. Is there parking on both sides of the street, or just one side? Or like, I don't know how wide the street is, that how much we need for driving space as opposed to parking. That's my first question.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Deputy Mayor Malash, yes, you're correct. There won't be any sidewalks along Street C or Street B or Street D. Our typical roadway allowance is 66 feet. So every lot will have to include, you know, driveway approaches. In terms of whether there's going to be parking on the sidewalk, I think it's up to us to decide. So I can turn it over to our Director of Infrastructure Services to comment more, but I understand if parking is not strictly prohibited, then it's permitted.
Okay. Thank you.
I will ask Director Gerard then, what's the width of this road? Are we paving so that there's going to be parking on both sides and then 2 lanes of traffic?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as Rita said, it's 66 feet right away, so it's the full 20 meters. The pavement width itself is 8 meters, so it's our full non-reduced pavement width, which will permit parking on one side. And essentially we'll do a quick review once servicing plans are completed, but we'll have to look for opportunities for parking in between driveways as well. And then also looking for conflicts with water main and hydrants, that kind of thing. But it hasn't been determined which side of the road or anything like that, which parking will go, but it will accommodate one side of parking.
Okay. Is that what our standard applies, that we only want one side of the street parking, or is this something less than what our standard sets up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because these roads are local roads, they don't provide enough space to have parking on both sides of the road and be able to clear snow and do the maintenance that we would do on a daily basis through our public works team. So this would be the standard, as having 8 meters of pavement with parking on one side of the road. We try and avoid things like alternating parking because of enforcement issues and because of snow clearing. So this would be our standard at the moment. As you know, we are refreshing our development standards manual, which could provide for some alternatives, which council will receive hopefully sometime in the new year.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Mayor, if you'll allow me one more question for
Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead. Go ahead.
As far as not having a requirement for sidewalks on these streets, I just want to make sure we're being safe here, that we're not going to have our insurance company come back to us at a later point in time and tell us that we need to have sidewalks down these lanes. Is that something that we would pass by our insurance company to make sure that that's a reasonable assumption not to have sidewalks on these particular streets?
Can I answer it? Kevin, can you answer that?
Not sure who would answer that. Yeah.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The rationale behind not having the sidewalks on the dead end streets is because they really lead to nowhere. The amount of traffic that would be on those roads and compared to the upkeep and maintenance and replacement costs of those assets, they're really not worth it. I can't foresee having an insurance company tell us that we are required to put a sidewalk, especially in the circumstance where it's a dead end road. So I don't foresee having to ever install sidewalks down these roads in the future.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Thank you.
Okay. Was there anybody else? Oh, anybody else, council? Deputy Mayor Malashi had something else? No? Okay, so I'm going to need a motion to receive the report first, and then we'll move right on to delegation here. I need a motion to receive it. Councillor Van Dolen and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? Carried. And we'll move right on to Walter. Are you there, Walter? Franco, are you there? Walter? Okay, we'll come back to Walter. Shane, okay, are you there? Can you hear us? Shane?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Go ahead, Shane. Go ahead.
I mean, we're all for the development, obviously, in Harrow. We want to see more development in Harrow to grow the community. I guess my only concern is, and I guess Rita did mention it in the beginning there in her presentation, they really haven't got down to where the exact driveway is going to be. The reason my concerns are, and my wife's concerns is we have the property adjacent across the street from basically where the entrance exit's going to be at 1425 Erie Road. And we're just worried about lights coming from vehicles and potentially somebody blowing the stop sign and coming into my front yard. So we're looking at, I just wanted some clarification of where entrance exit is, and I don't see this as going to be available to me at this time, but it's something that is a question, I guess, down the road.
Okay, thank you, Shane. I think going back to Rita, I think, go ahead, Rita. Did you want to speak on that? Go ahead. No, you're muted. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So I have been corresponding with Mr. Ruthven. And as I noted in my presentation, the current access to the property at the intersection of the subject site and County Road 13 will be the sole access to the property. So this is where ingress and egress will take place. As well, I noted that a stop sign will be the main form of control for this intersection. And I also noted that in terms of light pollution, it will be controlled. We did a photometric analysis and we found that it complies with the dark sky policies. It will be a lighted intersection. I mean, above and beyond that, it's a T intersection, so it's common throughout the town. And obviously, we recognize that there might be some nuisances with headlights at the intersection projecting into Mr. Ruthven's property. In terms of safety, again, I don't know if there's anything further I can add with respects to the stop control intersection. Perhaps Mr. Gerard has more to add on that.
Thank you, Rita. Kevin, did you have anything to add?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, Rita covered most of it. You know, we really don't have a finalized road design yet. We don't know. There's a lot of factors when it comes to headlights, whether the road grade is sloped down, the elevation of the house across the street, the elevation of the intersection. The traffic impact study did identify this as a stop controlled access. So traffic will have to stop when they're heading westbound up to Erie and then make their movement left or right. As Rita mentioned, this is no different than any other T intersection within the town of Essex. There isn't much that the town can do to control light pollution from vehicular headlights.
Thank you, Kevin. Back to Shane. I hope it answers some of your questions, Shane, and I'm sure administration will keep you in the loop of what's going on there, but I hope it was explained well enough for you tonight. But
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead, Shane.
Appreciate everything, every guys, and like I said, we're all for the development.
Yeah, I know you are, and we appreciate that too. So, thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
I'm gonna see if Walter Branco, are you there, Walter? Well, you're showing on the screen, Walter. I don't know where you are, but so I guess Walter won't be speaking tonight. And I guess we're at the end here, and we've heard from everybody, and I'm all in favor of the development, and I think everybody on council is. So it's good. Walter, are you there now?
I am here.
Where have you been?
Good evening, everyone.
Go ahead, Walter. Go ahead.
Good evening. Let's see. My IT guy went home early this evening, so I'm all alone.
Go ahead.
Yes. So I wanted to clarify a few questions, or I guess comments that came up earlier in the discussion from some of the councillors. One, in reference to the sidewalks and the cul-de-sacs, in past developments, we've learned that sidewalks and cul-de-sacs would actually add for more vehicles parking on the roads. So if with limiting the sidewalks and the cul-de-sacs, you're actually creating more driveway parking, and off-road. So that's the reason for the cul-de-sacs and providing more driveway parking versus road parking. The other question, I guess, came about phasing. So yes, phase one is slated to start, and timing. We are very anxious to get going. It's been 3 long, exhausting time and costly years for us to get this far. So we're very committed to wanting to get this project in the ground as soon as possible. Obviously, as Rita mentioned, we still do have the next council meeting, hopefully December 7th, and then the county. And then we have the MOE application that has to be submitted. But once all approvals, we're slated and hopeful to get started right away. Spring is our target timeframe. We're very hopeful to start. And with phase one, we're going to see, obviously, there could be some variations with phase two if there's, obviously more need or more desire for single family homes. There could be some changes, but we did all our stormwater management calculations, traffic studies for the highest density that potentially could be built on this development. And so that's why we've gone with the as many semis as we could with these the current lot layouts. And then the last question somebody had or discussion in reference to the Parkland designation / percentage. Typically, as Rita had mentioned earlier, 5% of the land is what is typically a common contribution that developers are responsible for. So 5% of 14 acres would be 0.7 acres. And so we are going to be recognizing that municipalities has stated that there's no need for parkland. So we will get a fair appraisal on what 0.7 acre of an acre would be worth, between 25, 35 an acre. And then that portion value would go towards the construction of the parking spot. We originally talked about 40 spots. We did allow space to provide for 60 so that if there were additional diamonds built, that we could accommodate up to 60. So I think that's, I believe I've discussed, hopefully clarified. And the last thing, the pond is a dry pond. This is a very similar situation scenario that we've done in development here in Ruthven, in Sun Valley Estates. If anybody, councils wants to view, they can stop by Noah Court in Kingsville and take a look at how we incorporated a dry pond, but use it for green space, and the community use it for green space. So there's no water in it on a regular basis. You will see inches of water only in a large surge rainstorm, and then within an hour or two, it's disappeared. So I think again, want to comment on how Town of Essex administrations worked very hard over the last few years with myself to make this project a reality, and I'm very excited and thankful for their cooperation. But I am ready to get the shovel in the ground. It's been 3 exhausting years, and so whenever we can, we're still committed and want to get Harrow, put on the map for sure, and provide some housing options. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. You know how excited I am about it. You and I have been working very closely on this project, setting up meetings and trying to push and push and push to get things done. And I think we've done a lot and to get it moving. So we want to thank you too for the development. Very, very important for our town of Harrow, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you, you'll sell those homes one right after another. One right after another, they'll be gone. So thank you so much, Walter. Anybody else from council? Councilor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Walter, for coming. That your answers to those questions helped clarify some of the questions that our residents had. The MOE application, is that going to come quickly after all of these other approvals, or do you foresee that being another hurdle? And if so, is there anything that we can do as a town to help expedite that application?
I'm not totally sure to answer that in the sense that I've understood that MOE can take anywhere between 3 months to 6 months to 9 months, to look at. However, as Mr. Gerard had stated earlier, IRCA and the town administration and their peer review have reviewed this immensely, 3-4 different revisions. I don't foresee that there's anything that hasn't been looked at or addressed. However, the political process, the red tape, I'm not sure. I'm hopeful that it isn't going to take 6 to 9 months, as some have stated. However, I would hope that town administration or councils, if putting a letter together stating the importance of this project on how it would do the town, if that's something that could help. I don't see how a letter could hurt, but I'm not sure if it would do anything. Again, I'm not don't claim to be a politician. I'm a builder who just wants to build homes. But the worst case scenario, I've heard from others that it takes sometimes 6 to 9 months. That there's no sense of urgency with the MOE process, unfortunately.
Thank you.
To follow up on that, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if Mr. Mayor, if you could at the next council meeting, if we can, under new business, write a letter. Maybe you can work together with Mr. Branco and bring a letter forward to the MOE. If it's not going to hurt, I don't know, but do it. I'll leave that to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? So thank you once again, Walter, and thank you, Shane. for putting your concerns forward. So thank you very much. And I guess we've covered everything. So up to council, I guess at this point here, we have nothing else. We'll go into adjournment. And Kevin Gerard, I do like your bow tie too. Can I see one more time? Go ahead. Let's see that bow tie. That's great.
Just keeping it classy for council.
Okay, thanks, council, and have a good evening. And I need a motion to adjourn. Need a motion, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Guerin, all in favor? Carried. Have a great evening, council. Thank you.